The world watched in disbelief as headlines flashed across screens and front pages. U.S. imposes steel tariffs on closest ally. It wasn't just another policy change, it was a jolt to the global order, a move that sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles and boardrooms alike. Not long after, another headline grabbed attention. India defies U.S. sanctions, finalizes Russian missile deal. This wasn't just about military hardware. It was a bold statement of independence, a signal that the world's largest democracy was ready to chart its own path, even if it meant clashing with Washington. The images that followed, shuttered Canadian factories, once busy plants now silent, and Indian military parades showcasing new defense systems, told a deeper story. These were more than news clips, they were symbols of shifting alliances and the real-world impact of high-stakes decisions. Canada, long seen as America's loyal neighbor and steadfast partner, suddenly found itself under immense pressure. Forced to renegotiate trade deals, Canadian leaders faced a dilemma. Some called their response a necessary compromise, while others saw it as reluctant capitulation to U.S. demands. Meanwhile, India moved forward with determination. Despite repeated warnings and threats of sanctions from the U.S., Indian officials stood firm, signaling a new era of assertiveness and self-reliance on the world stage. These pivotal moments raise a crucial question for the world. As American influence faces new and complex challenges, will nations choose to accommodate U.S. interests, as Canada did, or assert their own autonomy, as India has so clearly demonstrated? This isn't just about tariffs, trade, or defense deals. It's about the evolving future of global power, where every decision can tip the balance and reshape alliances for years to come. The United States remains a superpower, but the world is changing. Other nations are rising, forging new partnerships and demanding a greater say in how the global system operates. The stories of Canada and India offer powerful case studies in how countries navigate the complexities of American influence, sometimes yielding, sometimes resisting, but always adapting. Why did Canada bend under pressure, and why does India stand so firm? What drives these different responses to the same superpower? By exploring their unique histories, economic realities, and political cultures, we'll uncover what it truly means to be an ally or a competitor to the U.S. in today's interconnected world. Ultimately, it's a story of pragmatism versus principle, and the hard, often uncomfortable choices that nations must make as they navigate a rapidly changing global landscape. To understand why some experts predict that India might one day yield to U.S. pressure, it helps to look at the experience of another close American neighbor, Canada. The story of Canada's recent trade struggles with the U.S. offers a revealing glimpse into how even strong, friendly nations can find themselves in difficult positions when economic interests collide. When the U.S. imposed steep tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, it wasn't just a political move, it was a direct threat to Canada's economy, putting thousands of jobs and entire industries at risk almost overnight. The U.S. then demanded a complete renegotiation of NAFTA, the cornerstone of North American trade, and threatened to walk away entirely if Canada didn't agree to new terms that favored American interests. Canadian negotiators, facing immense pressure and the possibility of economic isolation, were forced to make difficult compromises to preserve access to their most important trading partner. The resulting deal, known as the USMCA, tilted the playing field toward the U.S., especially in sensitive sectors like dairy and automobiles, leaving many Canadians feeling shortchanged. Critics argued that Canada had little choice but to bow to a superpower, forced by its deep economic reliance on the U.S. market, and that this dependency left it vulnerable to American demands. This episode became a cautionary tale for other nations. If America's closest friend and neighbor could be pressured into concessions, could the same fate await a rising power like India? Some analysts argue that as India deepens its economic and strategic ties with the U.S., it too may one day face moments of hard choice, where national interests and economic realities collide. The Canadian experience suggests that, in the world of global trade, economic realities can sometimes outweigh even the strongest political principles or alliances. The question remains, if it happened to Canada, a country so closely tied to the U.S., why couldn't it happen to India as well, especially as their economic relationship grows? But India's story is different, shaped by its own unique history, ambitions, and approach to global partnerships. The future may hold surprises, but India's path won't simply mirror Canada's. Canada and India's responses to U.S. power are rooted in their histories. Canada's independence was gradual and peaceful, fostering a culture of negotiation and alliance. Its identity is built on partnership, first with Britain, then the US. Alignment feels natural. Canada values stability and incremental change, not radical independence. India's independence, by contrast, was won through a long, often violent struggle. This forged a fierce commitment to sovereignty and a deep suspicion of foreign domination. India led the non-aligned movement, refusing to be tied to any superpower. Strategic autonomy is central to Indian diplomacy, not just a relic of the past. Where Canada sees alignment as security, India sees over-reliance as a threat. These divergent histories explain why India is far less likely to bow to American pressure. Their pasts shape their present choices. Canada's economy is deeply tied to the US. About 75% of its exports go south. This overwhelming reliance on a single trading partner has shaped Canada's economic landscape for decades, making the US not just a neighbor, but an economic lifeline for Canadian businesses, workers, and entire industries. This integration means any disruption, like tariffs or border slowdowns, hits Canada hard and fast. Even minor policy changes in Washington can ripple across Canada, causing supply chain issues, price spikes, and uncertainty for Canadian families and companies. Canada's leaders know a trade war could trigger recession and job losses, so compromise is often the only option. The stakes are high. Protecting jobs and economic stability often means making tough concessions to keep trade flowing smoothly. Preserving U.S. market access is an economic necessity. For many Canadian exporters, the U.S. isn't just the biggest customer, it's sometimes the only viable one. India, in contrast, has a diversified economic profile. Its economy is built on a wide range of industries, from technology and textiles to agriculture and pharmaceuticals. The US is important but not dominant. India trades robustly with the EU, China, UAE, and others. This broad network of trading partners means India isn't overly exposed to the policies or pressures of any single country. Only about 17 to 18% of India's exports go to the US, a far cry from Canada's dependence. This lower percentage gives India more room to maneuver on the global stage. This diversity gives India flexibility. A dispute with the US wouldn't be existential. India can shift focus to other partners, cushioning the impact of any single trade conflict. India's vast domestic market adds resilience, letting leaders take a longer-term view. With a huge population and growing middle class, India can rely on internal demand to weather external shocks. Indian negotiators can risk standoffs in ways Canadians cannot. They have more leverage and can afford to hold out for better terms, knowing their economy won't collapse if talks stall. Economic structure shapes diplomatic choices. The way a country's economy is built determines how boldly its leaders can act on the world stage. Canada bends out of necessity. India stands firm out of strength. That difference is crucial, and it explains why each country approaches international negotiations so differently. India's resistance to pressure is rooted in its strategy of multi-alignment. Rather than rely on one partner, India builds ties with many, sometimes even with rivals. India is a member of both the US-led Quad and the China-Russia-led SCO, balancing interests on all sides. This lets India cooperate with the West on security, while engaging Russia and China on regional issues. In defense, India buys from Russia, the US, France, and Israel, refusing to be dependent on any one supplier. When threatened with US sanctions over Russian arms, India went ahead with the deal anyway. In energy, India increased Russian oil imports despite Western pressure, prioritizing affordable energy for its people. This flexibility extends across sectors. India always keeps options open. The result? India's interests aren't hostage to any single relationship. Where Canada is locked in, India pivots. That's strategic autonomy in action. Canada operates within the US-led financial and security system. Its economy, currency, and alliances are closely tied to America. This brings stability, but also limits Canada's independence. Challenging US financial power is almost unthinkable for Ottawa. India, meanwhile, is building alternatives. It's pushing to internationalize the rupee, settling trade in its own currency with partners like Russia and the UAE. India is a key player in BRICS, which has its own financial institutions outside the Western order. These moves aim to reduce vulnerability to US sanctions and create a more multipolar financial world. India's institutional diversification is a cornerstone of its autonomy. Canada aligns with the US system. India invests in alternatives. This shapes how each responds to American pressure. Financial architecture matters. Leadership style and public opinion drive each country's approach to the US. In Canada, politics is pragmatic. Leaders prioritize managing the U.S. relationship above all. The public expects cooperation, not confrontation. Defiance is rarely popular. Canadian leaders seek compromise, emphasizing shared values and stability. In India, nationalism is a powerful force. The public demands leaders stand up to foreign pressure, especially from the West. Any sign of bowing to the U.S. can be politically damaging. Leaders like Prime Minister Modi project strength and self-reliance, framing decisions as performances of sovereignty. Standing firm against U.S. pressure is a political asset in India. The Canadian public rewards careful management, the Indian public rewards assertiveness. These domestic realities shape foreign policy. Two democracies, two very different incentives. India is unlikely to follow Canada's path of accommodation. Their histories, economies, and political cultures create different playbooks. Canada's prosperity is tied to the U.S. Its foreign policy is about managing that relationship. Sovereignty for Canada is expressed through partnership. India, by contrast, is a civilizational state, a leader of the global South, and fiercely independent. Its diversified economy and multi-alignment reinforce its autonomy. With over 1.4 billion people and a growing economy, India commands global respect. The U.S. can't dictate terms to India without risking blowback. Comparing India to Canada misses the deep structural differences. Each nation's choices are rational for its context. India's independence is foundational, not negotiable. India will not simply defy or submit to the U.S., it will do both as needed. Indian diplomacy is pragmatic, guided by national interest. In a crisis, India might compromise if the benefits outweigh the costs, but it would be transactional, not a fundamental shift. Any concession would come with demands, technology, intelligence, or support on regional issues. India would frame compromise as tactical, not surrender. The future of U.S.-India relations will be a dance of cooperation, competition, and calculated compromise. India will stand firm on sovereignty but bend when it serves its goals. It won't be a repeat of Canada's experience. India's path is that of a rising power, confident, independent, and flexible. The world should expect India to be a pragmatic partner. Strength and flexibility will define its choices.